So I'm having a conversation with Jinna Jin. Jinna finished last year in her PhD program here at Fuller, now lives in Central California, and has continued to be part of a consulting group, key part of the consulting group with Alan Roxborough and me on something she got us into in Korea a number of years ago. So Jinna, thanks for doing this, and why don't we talk a little bit about how this particular network of pastors started this whole process?
About 3 to 4 years ago, me, Alan, and Mark, we went to Korea to learn about Korean culture and churches. And then as we make connections and relationship and friendship in there, we are able to find some group of pastors who are really eager to learn about different way of doing ministry and then way of living their life. So, about 3 years from now, we do the seminars every twice a year. We physically go to Korea and then we do the seminars with them. But then not only that, the pastors group kind of getting together and then form the learning community so that they're meeting every month together to learn from each other.
So let's talk a little bit about the seminar, the kind of things that were important to us, that basically it was creating a space so that they would want to enter into some new learning, some new practices. So maybe we can think about some of the types of things we covered in those seminars.
So when you think about seminar, that typically people expect that seminar is the new information, new techniques, and new skills. But then the seminar we do with these pastors is not about just tossing about new skills. It's more about cultivating new space so that people could reflect their own culture, own life, about theology. So we do a lot of listening exercise to each other, listening to God with Lexio, sometimes silent prayer, and then also processing their history and cultural history so that space could be a space for them to think and reflect together.
I remember a lot of that was the coming together of, since they were all experienced pastors, on one hand, they're reflecting on their own experiences and a longing for something different. And then in the midst of that, we did quite a bit of looking back at cultural history and mission history that shaped the Korean church, and therefore the kind of habits and patterns that they've been brought into, not because they've been worked through in a kind of reflective way, they've just inherited them. And so as they were able to name those things, they became more capable of evaluating, understanding, and that opened up a space for new imagination.
So when we think about our own culture, we tend to think, because I'm Korean, I know Korean culture. Because you're American, you know American culture. But that's not true. Unless you stop and reflect unless you process it, you don't really know about what's really going on. So creating a space and time for these pastors to reflect and name out what's really going on and then what was in history, what they experienced, what they heard, what they seen, and that actually create a space for them to actually think about what is really going on there. And then they were able to listen to each other, so that a lot of pastors actually said that that was really their first time to really reflect on their own culture and history.
And so coming out of that, and we know that, like we say, seminars, workshops really don't change much. They can open up a space, which is all we did. But we knew then that coming out of that, the way learning really happens is in an action reflection mode. And it very seldom works if we try it on our own, that it works best in learning communities. So that's when we started shaping first one and now a couple of clusters of pastors in a learning community that you're involved in coaching. So why don't we talk a little bit about what are the activities you get into with them and how's that go?
So when you have a really good seminar, you got really excited and then you think like you could change everything. But then when you come back to your daily life, you realize that everything's same. So it's really difficult to change anything. So that's why we really need a learning community so that we could actually keep trying on and then reflect together. So this learning community, basically we met once a month. Sometimes we met every week. And then in that community, what we do is we actually do the action reflection. What that means, we did that really small activity exercise experiment. And then everybody do that and then come back and then we reflect together. So for example, one of the small exercise we did was 8 hours sleep.
Activity. 8 hours of sleep.
Yeah, I know it sounds okay for some of them, but if you think about Korean churches and context, when I said 8 hours sleep per day, almost all pastors in learning community said like, no, that's not gonna be possible to do that. But because I'm a coach, I'm a person with authority, I said like, you have to do this. Why don't we just try 1 week, right? So
and nobody in the group would have done this before, right?
No, never ever, because they come to church 5 a.m. for the early prayer meeting, and then they come home really late. So I would say average of sleep time for these pastors are like 4 to 5 hours. If you say like 6 hours is a really good time. So when I say 8 hours, that was really shocking for them. But when they actually exercise, when they try and they do the action for the 8 hours sleep, and when they come back and reflect together, it was really a lot more than I just said like 8 hours sleep is really important. What they say to me, without me telling them, they said, after the 8 hours sleep, I could pray better. I could read better. I could think better. I could be a better Christian. That's what they said. So action reflection is actually the rhythm of doing rhythm of a learning, new way of learning. So these pastors have come together. They discuss together. They share their struggle and concern, and then they commit each other to do the new but small experiment, and then they do that in their daily life, and they come back and they reflect together.
So in the action reflection rhythm, if I remember right, just normally, and this is not just what we as Christians are doing, a lot of it's rooted in Paul Freire's work, is as you come back together, you basically report on 3 things. What did I do? What are my reflections on that? What did I learn? What happened? That kind of thing. And then what are my next steps going to be? And those 3 questions, while they might get shaped in different ways, depending on the group and what Bible study you're doing that time, but it's always, here's what I did, here's what I reflect and think about it and what I learned, and here's what I'm going to do next. And so why do they need a coach? So
coach is not a high school teacher to tell you what to do step by step. Coach, I'll say, is more like pacemaker. So when you do, sometimes because of all the schedules and busy lifetime, you kind of forget, and then there should be somebody who knows about how to work together. So my number one role for these learning communities is helping them to keep going. So when we come together, sometimes some people say, oh, this week I didn't do anything, I couldn't do anything. That's okay. So, but still, they need to come back to this learning community and share and listen from each other. So that's the number one role for me, to helping them to keep going together. And then secondly, my role is to be a more interpretative leadership. I don't know if this term is familiar for you guys, but so learning communities as a community, not individual, but as a community, to discern together, to participate God's word. So as a coach, you listen really carefully and then see what's really going on, and then to understand what they are doing, and then what they need to do, what they need to hear, listen together. So as interpreting that their conversation, you could suggest, you could share together to what might be the next step together.
And so your work is listening carefully, helping them hear each other, because you're much more embedded in this material, both how many years you've been involved in it and the amount of study you've done. There are ways you bring insights, you remind them of some of the things from the seminars, you remember things or even get into more stuff from the culture. But it's that kind of prompting, enlightening, encouraging, imaginative work that keeps them doing their work. That I know when we've even talked about whether they want to continue without a coach, just every one of them saw the value of having you as a constant companion in this process, even though much of the time you've ended up having to do it by video while they're live because you weren't in Korea all the time. So what have been some of the consequences of these groups?
So this group of learning community, they're typical average Korean pastors who sleep only 4 to 5 hours a day and who always busy, who didn't have really time to think, pray, and do anything else. But now we have been together for over 1.5, almost 2 years now. And then couple days ago, actually, one of the learning community member came to me and saying, finally, I start enjoying my ministry.
Wow.
And then some other pastor was saying, for the first time, I was able to talk to my wife. So I said, what do you mean? You've been divorced, separated? And then he said, no, we've been together all the time. But then I was always busy to think about ministry, schedule, and everything. But as we walk together this journey with the learning community, this learning community really helped them to create a space where God could work. You could stop and wait and see, and reflect actually. So they had more time to appreciate what they have, and then they don't need to feel really pressure to solve everything, fix everything, or make a really good outcome. They got out of that kind of pressure as a free human being, so that they could rely on God more. They could appreciate their family, their friends, and their neighborhood more.
If I remember right, last time I was there, we had some pretty amazing stories, not only about marriages, but also about relationship with children.
In the shame honor culture, in the hierarchical culture, the father is the figure who is all the authority, and the children often neglected and ignored. But as we walk together, their relationship, their perspective on people got really change it. So they're able to really appreciate their children too. So one of pastors actually shared the testimony that he was able to say sorry to his son for being hierarchical father all the time. So he was able to listen more. He was able to spend enough time with the son without expecting anything, or without some kind of agenda. They were able to enjoy the time, just hang out together.